we got to about 2 million in revenue, and I wanted to shut down the agency. I wanted to literally quit. I was so miserable. I hated what I did. I felt like every decision was going through me. I felt like an elephant was sitting on my chest. That same elephant I told you to eat, he was sitting on my chest.
You weren't eating him fast enough.
Yeah. And I needed to get out. And I remember my wife telling me one day, he's like, why don't you just quit? Why don't you go get a job? Like, if you're under so much pressure, you're so miserable to be around, go get a job. And so I interviewed with NASCAR, and they asked me 2 questions. And I used to be a race car driver. So I was like, oh, I'll go work for NASCAR, right? They asked me 2 questions that changed everything. I didn't know how to answer them in the interview, but they said, what do you love doing every day that you want to continue doing? And what do you hate doing that you never want to ever do again? And so I went home and I thought about it, because I just botched the interview, which is really good. It turned out, because I don't know if I had a good interview, I kind of just quit. But I went back and I sat down and I just started writing on a sheet of paper all the things I never wanted to do again. I spent maybe like an hour. And I was like, okay, project management, dealing with clients, all that stuff. I was like, all right, well, what do I love doing? Like, what gives me energy? And I started writing that down. So one of the exercises I tell everybody, and you guys can go do this, get a sheet of paper, put your fist on it, draw a circle around your fist. Spend about an hour outside the circle writing all the shit you don't want to do. And then after that, spend what's all the stuff you want to do. So from that, I go, man, I love coaching my team. Like, I love building, my team up. I love being the face of the organization. I love building, relationships. I love setting the vision of the agency, because I'm an idea guy, and then communicating that to the team. So that became the role that I needed to fill, and that gave me energy. And then that's how we started building ourselves to working with the biggest clients in the world.
Interesting. And that transition meant that you had to put the right people next to you who could fill the other pieces, right?
Exactly. Right. I was trying to do everything. And also too, here's the deal. I didn't tell the team where we're going. So every decision had to go through me.
Yeah.
It's kind of like we're on a boat from New York to London, and I have my whole team on it, and I drive it for about 10 hours. And after about 10 hours, I'm like, dude, you got to take over. Like, you drive, but if the boat changes course, come get me. Well,
right.
If you've ever been on a boat, it changes course every 2 seconds. Right. But if I just told them, hey, steer to the heading, 270, we're going to London. Well, anytime the boat changes course, I can sleep the whole way.
Yeah. And you're going to Paris, right, for sailing. You sure you don't want to watch that sailing race there?
Every time I've been on a sailboat, I've sunk it, crashed it, or almost drowned. So
there's the reason. Okay. So then tell me, what was the tipping point then? Because obviously you had this interview, you went and you decided, okay, I'm going to list what I love, what I don't love. And now that gave you a little bit of clarity. But there's a big difference between clarity and kind of execution, right? So now you have to go and make some decisions. Who do you bring on? What do you do? Are you making enough money right now at this stage in order to bring on the right person? What did that look like from a more kind of tactical execution standpoint?
Well, it was about, where do I want to take it? And then the 2 who's. Who do I need to bring on to help me? And who do I need to become? Because you got to think, when I started the agency, I was a 22-year-old punk kid that knew nothing. I didn't know what an invoice was. So you have to grow. And the agency will only grow up to the level of the leadership. And so if the leadership is not constantly elevating and growing and going up, the agency is not going to go up. And so those are what I needed to figure out. So I needed to figure out, where do I want to go? I didn't want to figure out the how. That wasn't my job. That with the who. And then who do I need to become in order to become the leader and really kind of transform from the owner to the CEO. And those roles, I told you, those are kind of a CEO role. But when you're actually able to achieve this, and I see this in our agency mastermind all the time, they're able to achieve these roles And they go to me like, oh, I'd love not to do project management. I'd love not to do sales. I'd love not to do delivery, all this stuff. I'm like, okay. And I don't want them to either, because then it gives them options in order to sell or create other businesses and that kind of thing. But when you're transformed from an owner to a CEO, congratulations, you're going to be depressed and depressed, right? Because now that the agency in your eyes, in the past eyes, right? The old you doesn't need you for all the old shit you used to do, but it needs you for the new things. So when you start realizing it needs me for the new things, because I would go into a creative meeting. Oh, Jason, I don't need you. I go into a sales meeting. Don't need you. I go into all these meetings and I'm like, shit, man, no one needs me. What do I do?
Yeah.
And your listeners listening will be like, man, that'd be awesome. Well, it is awesome once you realize now you have a new role. But you will just remember, you'll be depressed for however long, and then you'll be like, oh shit, this is nice.
You know what? It's funny. We did the same thing with when I grew. I got to a stage with Funalytics. I grew the team, and it was a weird transition because I did something very similar. Somebody told me and gave me this very interesting kind of graphic to represent like how to think about as a CEO, especially when you raise money, and we raised VC funds. And he kind of gave me this. It's like a whatever x-axis, y-axis, and on the y-axis is experience, and then on the x-axis, the bottom axis is time. And he kind of explained to me and said, look, here's what happened, right? If in a traditional bank, what will happen is kind of this linear growth. So your experience moves with time, and it's kind of linear. So you're going to start with an account person or like a teller when you have zero experience, and you're going to do that for about 5 years, and then you're going to go to like junior manager, and then you're going to do that for 5 years, and then you're going to level up to senior manager, regional manager, VP, etc. And it takes about like 35 years to kind of go from beginning all the way to like C-suite, right? To like a high level, because it takes about that amount of time for you to learn these particular skill sets. But when you are growing and you're growing quickly, especially kind of in a startup, you have to realize that what's happening is you're compressing that time. So you've got to accelerate your experience levels in a much, much shorter amount of time than the 5-year time span. So he kind of said to me, he's like, look, you need to understand what a CEO does, and you need to level up your mindset towards just what does a CEO do? And a CEO is there to make sure you don't run out of money, make sure that you understand the vision, and build the right people to send them towards that vision, right? Build who you have to become, and basically where are we going, like you said, right? But there's this transition that you go through because you're so used to hustling, so used to doing things, so used to getting your hands dirty, where you're lost because you're like, I don't know what the hell to do with my time. What am I like? I don't know how to be just the vision person, or so it's fascinating to hear how you kind of gone through that.
You feel bad because you don't have to work as hard.
Exactly.
Right. And when you go, man, I can leave early. Like I work 10 hours a week.
Yeah.
That's it. Like, I don't do meetings on Monday. I have epic Fridays, and I'm with my family on Saturdays and Sundays. Tuesdays through Thursdays from 9 to about 2, I have my meetings or interviews and that kind of stuff. So, but like when that first happening and I started designing that, I felt guilty. But then I'm like, oh, my team actually likes it when I'm out.
To be honest, especially if you're a visionary founder like you and like me too, where ideas come to us all the time, we actually end up creating chaos, right? Like we end up like our team hates it because you're always coming up with new ideas when they're supposed to stay the course and execute. And that was one of the hardest things I had to learn. Like I used to self-sabotage the company in the early days because I'm always constantly coming up with new ideas.
Yeah. What about this? What about this?
Yeah, exactly. Guys, what do you think? We can do this, right? And they're like, but you just told us yesterday on Friday, it's Monday. On Friday, you told us that we're going to do this. And it's like, yeah, but I spent the last 48 hours thinking about these new things, haven't.
My team now calls it the Jason rule. Any idea I have to think about it for 24 hours.
Nice. That's good. It means that they need to sit back and, all right, this is Jason